I come from a background of having an undergraduate degree in psychology and being very interested in the human sciences and, you know, kind of what makes us who we are and why we are who we are and why we do what we do. And also a working and volunteering background of being involved in various women's organisations, London Rape Crisis, organisations that support women who are fleeing from abuse, and volunteering in a school for children with emotional and behavioural difficulties, and working in a mental health crisis project for women in London that was an alternative to a psychiatric admission, that was based in the community and that was about meeting women where they were in their mental health distress and allowing them to decide what was best for them in terms of their needs at the time and providing them with a safe place. So the experience of using relationship to help people with their psychological distress was really important to me. And the shared humanity of us all was really important to me because I'm a human being like anyone else and I also experience distress and suffering. I'm sensitive to that and I wanted to be able to alleviate that in other people. So a combination of those things led me, when I was looking to become an applied psychologist and to do postgraduate training, to investigating all the different possibilities and options, and counselling psychology was the best fit for me at the time. Something else that attracted me to counselling psychology as an applied psychology specifically was the need to question our assumptions and to hold a critical perspective on the fields of knowledge that are developed within the sciences, and to be open to multiple perspectives, multiple truths, each with an element of validity. I was first inspired by listening to a Carol Gilligan lecture as an undergraduate, which really opened my eyes to the influence of context in terms of the development of knowledge and our own unique positions in relation to that. So that critical perspective was really important as well. My role at Glasgow Caledonian University involves a wide range of activities, and that's something that really appeals to me in terms of the profession of counselling psychology as a whole, is the scope of the work that we can be involved in. I have a real passion for learning, and working in a learning environment is like a dream come true for me, and to be part of students' development and their growth and their professional and personal development, and kind of there's a consciousness raising aspect of that too that I think I'm really privileged to be a part of. So relationships with the students, following them through their kind of process of training and everything that involves. I really enjoy that and I find that very inspiring. The ways that I contribute to that are through teaching, and that might be kind of delivering lectures, it might be running workshops and seminars on various different topics that I'm interested in, and I'm a part of a small team of counselling psychologists, so we all kind of share that teaching role. I also get involved with research supervision. Our students are conducting doctoral level research projects from the beginning of writing a 10,000 word critical literature review, doing their methodological proposals, proceeding through ethics applications, and then conducting their final research study. I'm involved in assessment as well, so that might be marking, giving feedback, supporting students with making resubmissions and learning the different assessment criteria that we're asking them to demonstrate. Doing some internal examining in terms of the final assessment process as well, which involves an oral viva examination. And I coordinate the final stage of training for our students, so I'm quite involved in them kind of pulling everything together and integrating their learning and reflecting on the whole of their experience of learning. And my role at Glasgow Caledonian University also involves a kind of coordinating element. So that might be developing modules and coordinating the input for those modules and making sure that they meet the various requirements that they're supposed to meet for an accredited training, so liaising with BPS and HCPC, as well as thinking a bit about what us as a particular training programme might want to bring to that process that's about, about our university and about our Scottish context. I have the opportunity to read research regularly with a kind of a critical perspective, and be thinking with students and on behalf of students about current developments in the field of counselling psychology, but the field of kind of psychological therapies more widely, and the development of psychological services. I have a particular interest in working with community and the possibilities around making psychology accessible to everybody, and in a kind of a user-friendly way, and also thinking about the gaps in terms of particular groups of people that maybe struggle to find psychological services, or think that maybe they wouldn't be benefited by them. So there's a kind of, in an academic role at university, there's a real value in being up to date and current, and having a level of academic rigour that informs all aspects of work in a university setting, but also informs practice and my work in my other role in independent practice. And to have those impacting on each other, the academic role and the practice role, is really fantastic. My work in independent practice is with a group of colleagues who are all applied psychologists, clinical psychologists, counselling psychologists, health psychologists, sports and exercise psychologists, and also our counselling and psychotherapy colleagues as well. And we all share a space and work as members or as partners in an organisation. And that means that I get to focus very much on doing the therapeutic work with clients, and the organisation takes care of the kind of more business and marketing and referral side of things. So I have a range of clients that might have referred themselves, or might have been referred by a health professional, or maybe their family member has brought them along in the case of young people. And for the widest spectrum of psychologically related issues, there's really kind of no rules to clients that might want to come and find psychological therapy for their current difficulties. So there's really a wide range of issues that clients will bring. And I tend not to think necessarily in terms of labels or diagnoses, but kind of meeting somebody for the first time and wanting to take some time to listen to what they have to say, to understand their distress, to talk with them and think with them a bit about the causes of their current distress and what might be factors maintaining that, and to think about the range of different interventions that might best fit their needs at that moment in time in that particular context. The two groups of people, I'm generalising a little bit, but the two groups of people that I work mostly with are people who have the sorts of difficulties associated with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder. So they might be people who experience very intense emotions, very quickly changing emotions. They have often, because of that, and sometimes because of the impact of the environment, that they have developed unhelpful coping strategies, sometimes patterns of self-destructive behaviours, including self-harm and suicide and other kind of risk-taking behaviours. And there's often kind of really difficult consequences to those sorts of difficulties, particularly in terms of relationships with themselves, relationships with other people, and kind of general, everyday living. And the other group of clients that I do a good bit of work with is people who identify as being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, the LGBT community. And they might come seeking psychological therapy for a whole range of different reasons that may be something to do with their gender or sexual identity, or may have nothing to do with their gender or sexual identity, and everything in between. There's an additional element to independent practice in terms of working with a group of people that I really enjoy, which is the opportunity for mentoring and working with colleagues who are just starting out in independent practice and supporting them in their kind of journey into their independent practice and developing that safely and successfully. I also support our admin team in terms of their role. They kind of have a frontline role, answering telephones to people who are in distress and are kind of looking for someone who's in a position to help them. So that's really important to me too, in terms of offering support to people that we work with in our organisation. And there's also the opportunity to develop workshops, webinars, kind of training events, courses, all sorts of things in terms of bringing psychology and psychological issues to the public, and in a way that is hopefully accessible. Being a representative myself of the LGBT community and identifying as a lesbian woman, and being out and visible in that, and recognising that for other members of the LGBT community that might be something that's really important to them and something that they are looking for in terms of seeking help with their psychological distress. So that's something that's really important to me, and actually that's one of the things that was also important to me in seeking out counselling psychology postgraduate training, was that I had the experience of being able to be fully myself, whoever that was, and that being something that was valued and embraced. So that's important to me, and people who identify as LGBT might be presenting for therapy with a range of different difficulties, and some of those might be related to their identity as a gender or sexual minority, or they might be something that's not necessarily related to that. There has been some research that shows that minority group members experience a certain level of stress just from living in the world, and that can lead to the development of various mental health issues, or kind of everyday living having an element of psychological stress attached to it. So they might come for some support and psychological therapy related to those sorts of issues. But most people will go about living their lives kind of happily. I think there might be particular issues when it comes to relationships and relationships with family members, and that might be family of origin, or it might be that somebody who identifies as LGBT is wanting to start a family of their own, or they might have already done that and they might be struggling with issues to do with parenting. So those can be some of the things that I work with people. Again, in terms of the profession of counselling psychology, as I kind of experience it and as I understand it, there is a commitment to not just working with an individual, but also taking a wider view in terms of the causes of psychological distress. And that includes looking at the individual in their immediate context, but also kind of social, political, cultural influences in terms of understanding their psychological distress. And a commitment to not just working with somebody who is being oppressed, for example, but addressing the inequalities and social injustices in society to try and undo some of that oppression. I feel like there's a lot that I could say in answer to that question, which is a wonderful position to be in, because it's not just a job that I get up and do in the morning. It's very much part of how I see myself and who I am, and the work isn't kind of just fulfilling a role, for example, or working in one sector, or even kind of working in one particular way in terms of psychological therapy. So there's a whole kind of diversity of ways of being in a therapeutic relationship with someone, as there should be, because we are a diverse group of people as humans, and I like that flexibility and I like that diversity, and I enjoy the kind of the micro level in terms of relationship and interpersonal experiencing, the micro level of being attuned with another person, and kind of almost on many different levels at one moment in time, and that might be sensing, it might be thinking, it might be moving, it might be being aware of what's happening emotionally in the room. So there's the micro level of kind of almost, sometimes it's like I suppose being in psychological contact with that other person and experiencing a kind of an element of flow in terms of the moment-to-moment experiencing with that person and meeting them where they are in them being other to me. So that's at the micro level, and then kind of almost at the other end of the scale, the experience of the kind of macro level of the commitment to justice in the world in relation to mental health and psychological distress. And having an explicit commitment to that as a counselling psychologist, not being or recognising, rather than not being, recognising if I am being part of a system that is potentially oppressive, and asking sometimes difficult questions around that, or standing out in a crowd around that. I enjoy all of that, despite not all being rosy and easy, but that's kind of life, and that's who we are too. And I think it's really important to learn to be uncomfortable at times in the spirit of, or you know, when kind of values are important. Something else that I enjoy about the profession of counselling psychology and being a counselling psychologist is this idea of holding multiple perspectives at any one time, and that I can use that in my practice. So I might have a particular theory that I want to follow, and that I'm making use of, or an evidence base for a particular psychological intervention, and that I can also at the same time think about and hold the perspective of the client and their unique context in mind. And also then I get to use myself in the work too, and the role of empathy in our practice. So it's being able to kind of hold scientific elements, I guess, or science, as well as the ability to reflect and to use oneself in the moment, which is kind of about creativity and artistry and kind of craft maybe, as well as being a scientist. Don't discount yourself from an academic perspective or a financial perspective or a individual context perspective. The route for a counselling psychologist in training can be very flexible in terms of full-time or part-time study, and bring who you are to the application process, because that's hugely important. I would encourage graduates who are considering training in counselling psychology to get in touch. Find a training program and send an email, arrange to have a conversation and ask questions. Consider that the role in terms of the future of applied psychology too, and that there is an increasing focus on understanding psychological processes that underpin mental health difficulties or psychological distress, rather than necessarily delivering packages of interventions, but the processes underlying those, which would apply to us all, and the connection with the body and epigenetics, and all, kind of a real joined up way of thinking about humans and the experience of human distress. So also the kind of cooperation in terms of psychotherapy research and psychological research, and the development of new kind of psychological therapies. So I think there's lots there in terms of contributing to the future of counselling psychology as an applied psychology. I've become more involved over the past couple of years in the division of Counselling Psychology in Scotland, and the British Psychological Society also as a kind of a bigger organisation. And DCOP Scotland has kind of really been a place where I've been able to contribute to the work of the division, but also find a great deal of support for my own kind of professional development and my relationships with colleagues who are, we're all kind of sharing the Scottish context, and some of us are fairly kind of spread out. So it's a place where we can kind of provide support and connection and do some joint work as well as interdisciplinary work and interdivisional work with other colleagues and psychologists. And it's been really valuable and inspiring to be a part of that. And DCOP more widely, and the BPS also have been supportive of leadership development for me personally, and in an ongoing way for counselling psychologists. And I think we have great potential to take up leadership roles within our professional field and within the field of mental health services and psychological services UK-wide.